My dear brothers and sisters, pause for a moment and imagine yourself standing on the threshold of a dream, a promise whispered to your ancestors, a land of abundance and rest, yet guarded by towering walls and fierce warriors. For 40 long years, you have wandered, your feet scorched by desert sands, your heart heavy with the memory of those who doubted and fell. Now the moment is here. The river before you rages, the cities beyond bristle with defiance, and a voice calls you to lead where others faltered. Would you rise? Would you trust a God who has never broken his word? This is the story of Joshua, a humble servant turned warrior, whose faith brought down the mightiest fortresses and fulfilled a promise that seemed unreachable. Walk with me, for this is a tale of courage, obedience, and a God whose love endures through every trial. The dawn broke over the plains of Moab, painting the horizon with hues of gold and crimson. Below, the tents of Israel stretched across the valley, a people transformed by the wilderness. For 40 years, they had roamed, their parents' generation buried beneath the sands for their unbelief at Sinai. But this was a new generation, their eyes fixed on a land flowing with milk and honey, their spirits forged in the fire of God's presence. Their leader, Moses, the man who spoke with God face to face, had climbed Mount Nebo. There, he gazed upon the promised land, its rolling hills and fertile valleys shimmering in the distance. But his journey ended there. God called him home and Israel mourned. Yet even in grief, God's purpose marched forward. To Joshua, son of Nun, came the divine command, "My servant Moses is dead. Arise, take up the mantle, and lead my people into the land I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Wherever your foot treads, I give to you. Be strong and courageous, for I am with you as I was with Moses. Do not turn from my law, and you shall prosper." Joshua stood before the tribes, his face etched with the weight of his calling. He was no prophet like Moses, whose staff parted seas, nor a king adorned with glory. He was a warrior, a faithful servant who had stood at Moses' side through the plagues of Egypt, who had spied out Canaan when others quailed. Now his hour had come. His voice rang out, steady and sure. "The Lord has delivered this land into our hands. Prepare your hearts and your provisions, for in 3 days we will cross the Jordan." The crowd stirred, and an old man stepped forward, his frame bent but his spirit unyielding. It was Caleb, son of Jephunneh, Joshua's brother-in-arms from the days of the 12 spies. 40 years ago, Caleb proclaimed, "We walked this land, you and I. We saw its giants, but we believed God's promise. Our brothers doubted and perished, but we stand here today. Let us seize what God has given." The people cheered, their hearts kindled by Caleb's fire. Yet Joshua knew the path ahead was fraught with peril. Before the conquest could begin, Joshua sought to know his enemy. He sent 2 spies to Jericho, the gateway to Canaan, a city famed for its walls. So high no army could scale them, so thick no battering ram could breach them. Its gates were sealed, its guards ever watchful. Yet within Jericho, fear had taken root. Tales of Israel's God had spread, how he shattered Egypt, how he parted the Red Sea, how he vanquished kings beyond the Jordan. The spies entered the city under cover of night, but their presence was betrayed. Hunted by Jericho's guards, they found refuge in the home of a woman named Rahab, a sinner in the eyes of her people, yet chosen by God for her faith. She hid them on her rooftop, covering them with stalks of flax, and whispered, "I know your God has given you this land. Our hearts melt before him. When you take this city, spare me and my family." The spies, moved by her courage, replied, "Hang a scarlet cord in your window, Rahab. Your faith will be your shield." They escaped, lowering themselves down the city wall, and returned to Joshua with a report that set his heart ablaze. "The Lord has delivered Jericho. Their fear is our victory." The day of crossing dawned. Israel gathered on the banks of the Jordan, its waters churning, swollen by spring rains. No bridge spanned its breadth, no ford offered passage. Yet God spoke to Joshua, "Command the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant and step into the river. When their feet touch the water, I will act." The priests, bearing the sacred Ark, obeyed. As their sandals broke the surface, a miracle unfolded. The waters upstream stood still, piling high as if held by an invisible hand, while the riverbed below lay dry. Israel crossed, 12 tribes strong, their feet treading where moments before a torrent roared. They gathered stones from the riverbed, piling them as a memorial, a testament to God's power. On the other side, they camped at Gilgal, no longer wanderers but a nation poised for conquest. Before them rose Jericho, its walls a silent taunt. But God's strategy was not one of swords or siege engines. As Joshua sought God in prayer, alone under the stars, a figure appeared, a warrior, clad in radiant armor, his sword gleaming. Joshua, hand on his hilt, challenged, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" The warrior's voice resounded, "Neither. I am the commander of the Lord's army." Joshua fell to his knees, trembling before this divine presence. "Remove your sandals," the commander said, "for this ground is holy." Barefoot, Joshua bowed, and God spoke, "Jericho is yours, but you will not take it by might. For 6 days, march around the city with my ark in silence. On the 7th day, circle it 7 times, then let my people shout, and the walls will fall." Joshua returned to the camp, his soul alight with certainty. This was no ordinary war. It was God's battle, and obedience would be their weapon. At first light, Israel marched. Priests bore the ark, their trumpets piercing the dawn, while the army followed in eerie silence. They circled Jericho once, their footsteps a rhythmic prayer, then returned to camp. The Canaanites watched from the walls, first with scorn, then with unease. For 6 days, Israel repeated this ritual, the trumpets wailed the only sound, the silence heavier each day. On the 7th day, the sun rose, and Israel marched not once, but 7 times. The priests blew the ram's horns with unrelenting force, the ark gleaming in the sunlight. At the 7th circuit, Joshua raised his hand and cried, "Shout! For the Lord has given you the city." A roar erupted, a sound that shook the earth. And then the impossible, Jericho's walls trembled, cracked, and crumbled into rubble. Israel surged forward, claiming the city. Yet amidst the judgment, a scarlet cord hung in a window. Rahab and her family were led to safety, her faith a beacon in the chaos, her name etched in the lineage of the Messiah. The fall of Jericho was a triumph, but the war was far from over. Joshua turned to Ai, a smaller city, its defenses modest. Confident, he sent spies who returned saying, "Ai is weak. Send 3,000 men." But when Israel attacked, Ai's warriors struck with ferocity, killing 36 men and driving the rest back. The army fled, their confidence shattered. Joshua tore his robes and fell before God, crying, "Lord, why have you abandoned us? Our enemies will devour us." God's voice was stern yet merciful. "Israel has sinned. One among you has taken what I forbade." The sin was traced to Achan, who had stolen gold, silver, and a Babylonian robe from Jericho, burying them in his tent. Confronted, Achan confessed, and justice was served, a painful reminder that God's people must be holy. Cleansed, Israel returned to Ai. God gave Joshua a new plan: set an ambush. Lure Ai's army out, and I will deliver them. Joshua divided his forces, drawing Ai's warriors into a trap. The city burned, its army vanquished, and Israel learned a humbling truth: victory belongs to God, won through obedience, not pride. But not all battles were fought with blades. The Gibeonites, a crafty people of Canaan, saw Jericho's ruin and Ai's fall. Knowing they could not withstand Israel, they devised a ruse. Dressed in worn robes, carrying cracked wineskins and moldy bread, they approached Joshua, claiming to be travelers from a distant land. "We have heard of your God," they said, "and seek peace." Deceived by their appearance, Joshua made a covenant without consulting God. 3 days later, the truth emerged: they were Canaanites, neighbors marked for judgment. Furious, Joshua cursed them to serve as woodcutters and water carriers for Israel's altar. Yet their deception ignited a greater storm. 5 Canaanite kings, enraged by Gibeon's alliance, united their armies to crush it. Gibeon sent a desperate plea: "Joshua, honor your covenant. Save us." Joshua marched through the night, his heart fixed on God's promise. At dawn, Israel attacked, catching the enemy off guard. God fought for them, sending hailstones from heaven that slew more than Israel's swords. As the day waned and enemies fled, Joshua lifted his voice, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon. Moon, halt over Ajalon." And the heavens obeyed. For a full day, the sun held its place and Israel triumphed, a miracle that echoed through the ages. The conquest pressed on. From Hebron to Debir, Bethel to Hazor, city after city fell. 31 kings were defeated, their fortresses reduced to ashes. Joshua divided the land, each tribe receiving its inheritance. Caleb, now 85, stood before Joshua, his voice unwavering. "You and I believed when others doubted. God promised me Hebron, and though giants dwell there, I will drive them out." With a nod, Joshua blessed him, and Caleb conquered Hebron, his faith a legacy for generations. Yet some tribes grew complacent, allowing Canaanites to remain, sowing seeds of future conflict. God also commanded Joshua to establish cities of refuge, havens for those who killed unintentionally, a testament to his justice and mercy. As years passed, Joshua grew old, his hair white, his hands scarred from battle. He gathered Israel at Shechem, his final words a charge and a warning: "God has given you this land, delivered you from every foe. But choose today whom you will serve. Will you follow the gods of this land, or the Lord who brought you here? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The people vowed their allegiance, and Joshua, at 110, was laid to rest in the land of promise. My beloved friends, the story of Joshua is not merely a tale of ancient battles. It is a mirror to our souls. Like Joshua, we stand at the edge of God's promises, called to trust Him through raging rivers and unyielding walls. Like Rahab, we are invited to hang a scarlet cord of faith, trusting God's mercy despite our past. Like Caleb, we are summoned to fight on, even when age or doubt tempts us to retreat. And like Israel, we learn that obedience, not strength, unlocks God's power. What Jordan stands before you today? What Jericho looms in your heart? Know this: the God who stopped the sun is with you still, His love unwavering, His promises sure. Let this story move you to action. Share it with those who need hope. Like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe, for soon we will bring you the story of the judges, heroes God raised when Israel strayed. If you hunger for more, watch our films on Genesis, where it all began, or Moses, the Exodus that birthed a nation. Perhaps explore Esther, a woman of courage, or Daniel, a prophet unshaken by empires. Choose one and journey deeper into God's Word. May the Lord bless you, guide you, and keep you always. Amen.